Tough way to end the season for the Tampa Bay Lightning, falling in the first round of the playoffs to the Florida Panthers for the second straight season. But here's why there's still some things to look forward to if you're a Lightning fan.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone. I'm Josh Sperber, thanking all of you for making Locked On Lightning your first listen every day. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if your team is the Tampa Bay Lightning, then this is the show for you. Today's episode is brought to you by the Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Turn any TV into your Xbox. No console needed. Head to amazon.com/firetv/lockedon to learn more. And I've learned everything I wanted to know about this Lightning playoffs. That was a tough way to finish the season for the Tampa Bay Lightning. They were outshot 31-29 by the Florida Panthers. But other than that, it was a relatively even game. Gage Gonzalez scored the first goal of the game, and then the Panthers got two more in the first. About 2 minutes after Lundell gave Florida the lead, Nick Paul tied it up after a beautiful steal and assist from Connor Geekie. Then, early in the second period, tip-in from Alexander Barkov. Gensel tied it up on the power play. About less than 5 minutes left in that second period is when it really ended for the Lightning. Sam Bennett just kind of snuck in and found himself a goal for the Panthers, and they took the lead for good after that one. And that Bennett goal, right on the end of a Lightning power play, he was just all alone and had plenty of time and room. That ended up being the winner. And that was honestly the MO of a lot of these goals from the Florida Panthers. That the Lightning just didn't have their heads on a swivel. They weren't marking the open man. I mean, a lot of the times the defense just seemed like they were puck watching, and so many goals these Panthers players just kind of slipped into open ice. Carter Verhaeghe on the power play is a perfect example. The Lightning lose the puck, and he comes back from behind the net, finds a wide open space, scores. Lundell sneaks in, a pass thrown on net from Marchand, deflects it in, scores. Barkov open in front of the net. There's just basically a red carpet lane for Gustav Forsling. Sends in the slapper. Barkov has enough space in front of the net. He scores. Lusterinen then on a breakaway from Brad Marchand, open net, scores. I mean, this was the problem for the Lightning all series long. Just they got caught watching the puck too many times. And it led to the Panthers finding a lot of open space and then finding a lot of open net. And Andrei Vasilevskiy, I think, played a fine game. There wasn't much more he could do. And most of these shots, it's one on Vasilevskiy, two on Vasilevskiy. However you want to categorize that breakaway, Vasilevskiy is getting one-on-ones against guys who have a red carpet lane towards the net. And that just doesn't amount to playoff success, no matter who your goaltender is. As good as Vasilevskiy was, I mean, there's just only so much he can do when you've got guys shooting wide open shots on you from in tight. Plain and simple. And I think the Lightning, they started off doing what they could, but that Sam Bennett goal right off the power play, the power play for the Lightning hasn't been great all series. They finally get a huge power play goal to tie the game about halfway through the second period. Then as soon as their next power play ends, he ends up with a wide open lane to the net coming right out of the penalty box. And that's backbreaking for Tampa, and it really showed. Not that the Lightning didn't have their chances, but those chances just dwindled because something that the Lightning did not do with the lead this series was clamp down. And that's exactly what the Panthers did as soon as that Sam Bennett goal was scored. These are both playoff teams. Both have had a lot of recent success in the postseason. And on Wednesday night, it was plain to see why it was the Panthers who've had more recent success in the postseason in the last couple of years. It's just been a really great run for Florida, and you have to give them a lot of credit because they did what the Lightning and frankly a lot of successful teams can't do consistently. And every game the Panthers had a lead, they locked it down right afterwards. And that was one of the reasons they won this series so quickly, a series that I thought was going to be really, a classic of two rivals coming off of great regular seasons, coming off of a lot of success and some evenly played matchups against each other, just going at it and going hard. But at the end of the day, the Panthers consistently outworked and outplayed the Tampa Bay Lightning in just about every single game of this series. The only exception was the game the Lightning won. They played a complete game that they really dedicated for Brandon Hagel, who they felt unjustly missed the game due to a suspension that they didn't think enough time was levied on it. By the time he got back, he got injured again by Ekblad. And, you can complain about the injuries and some of those dirty hits from the Panthers in game 4. Game 5 was pretty clean. You don't see a lot of hits that you think that should be worth another look. You don't see a lot of malicious play. That was just great hockey. And the Panthers did it better than the Lightning. Plain and simple. There's really not much else you can say about that. It's just the Lightning got beat. There's a lot of puck watching going on. Definitely some goals that you'd want to have back, and some players that might have been pulled out of position by the Panthers here and there. But for the most part, this was a game that the Lightning just flat out got beat. I don't think they came out flat offensively. They had as good of an offensive game as they've had in just about every other loss this series. And scoring 3 goals on the Panthers, particularly on Sergei Bobrovsky right now, is not easy because Connor Hellebuck might take the Vezina Trophy again. But in the postseason, Bobrovsky has been the best goalie so far, and you really have to give your hats off to him. He made some absolutely incredible saves, and you feel like he played better when the score was tighter, especially later in the game. He just got better as things went along, and the Lightning ran into a wall. You got to give Bobrovsky a whole lot of credit there. He made some saves that he probably shouldn't have that took away some goals. Late in that, I think it was the second period, soon after that Sam Bennett goal, the Lightning had a breakaway opportunity where they had 2 shots that were essentially one-on-one with Bobrovsky. Yeah, there were some defenders kind of clumped around him, but there was no one affecting that shot other than Sergei Bobrovsky. Then Gonzalez came in on the rebound, tried to lift it over him. Couldn't happen. Bobrovsky made some great saves, and without him, the Florida Panthers would not be in the second round of the playoffs. But, the Lightning did some things well, but there are definitely some areas for improvement that I think the Lightning needs to look at in the offseason. You feel somewhat lucky that they didn't have to use Max Crozier. He was kind of an emergency addition to the lineup with Victor Hedman's status in question at the beginning of Game 5. The Lightning played through this one a little banged up, but Hedman played decently well. They didn't need to use Crozier, who got some playoff experience last season for Tampa Bay. And that might have been a good thing. That might have been a bad thing because we're going to talk about it a little later, but he's someone I think can be a big factor for the Tampa Bay Lightning going forward, as I think they're going to have to look at some different options defensively. That I think was their weakest point over the course of the season, and certainly over the course of the playoffs. You just need some bigger bodies and some more talent on defense. And I think that's the biggest area the Lightning need to improve in over the course of the offseason, whether it's going to their AHL affiliate in the Syracuse Crunch or trying to make some moves, a little cap space they have. That's something we're going to talk about a little later on. But there are some positive notes coming from this postseason. And with in a couple of those instances, that involves some players who I think can be a big part of the future of this Tampa Bay Lightning team. Definitely some positives, some good things that I saw from the Lightning over the course of the postseason, some players that really emerged. And we're going to talk about that next as we try to take some positivity off of a tough postseason loss from the Lightning. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. Now I budget smarter and save more, and I cook a lot more too. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is also smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. A lot of things to be upset with. A lot of negativity coming from that first round postseason exit for the Tampa Bay Lightning. We're going to talk about some changes that I think do need to be made. But first, I want to talk about some positive developments. And to me, the biggest one was the play of two of the Lightning rookies, particularly on the offensive side. That would be Connor Geekie and, most importantly, Gage Gonzalez, who turned into a major asset to the Tampa Bay Lightning throughout the second half of the season. And he was one of the best offensive players for the Lightning in the postseason. Matter of fact, you look at the Bolts' postseason numbers after the first round series, Gage Gonzalez was second on the Lightning in points, tied with Nikita Kucherov. Goal and an assist in 5 games for Gonzo. Only Jake Gensel had more goals, as Gonzalez was tied with Gensel, Hedman, and McDonough for second on the team with 3 assists. Only Nikita Kucherov had more assists than Gage Gonzalez. And as I mentioned, only Gensel had more points. And to say you're in the same category with Nikita Kucherov in anything is a pretty big deal. And for Gage Gonzalez, a 24-year-old, in his first playoff series, in his first full season. He did play 2 games last year for the Bolts, but Gonzalez has really emerged into a force on the offensive side for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And I know I've talked a lot about how he played towards the end of the season. And I mean, I can't say enough good things about this kid. He has just really looked like a future star for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And there's been a lot of hype around Isaac Howard coming up to the Lightning. It doesn't look like he's going to be here until after the 2025-26 season. Going back to Michigan State once again, as there wasn't space for him just yet on the Tampa Bay Lightning roster, but he's someone to look at going forward. And Gage Gonzalez seems like he's going to be a guy on a future first line with Isaac Howard. He might not have been a highly touted prospect or one of the guys that was in, the top tier of Lightning prospects at the start of the season, but he just kind of came out of nowhere. Second round pick in 2020 for the Lightning. Putting up modest numbers, but still solid numbers in AHL Syracuse. And he just got better and better as the season went along. The going down there was definitely looked good for his development. He did some great things in Syracuse and was a factor in that team ending up in a playoff spot. Left about halfway through that season. And after the month of February, he's been one of the best players on the Tampa Bay Lightning offense. And, you see a guy at 24 years old, one of the youngest players in terms of offensive talent on the Tampa Bay Lightning roster currently. And that's a big positive. I really liked what I saw from Gage Gonzalez, and I'd expect him to have a much more prominent role on the Tampa Bay Lightning offense. I think he'll be switching between the second and third line starting next year, but he might not be, the next Steven Stamkos or someone like that in terms of a homegrown legend, but he is certainly going to be a guy who can play a factor on Tampa Bay Lightning's success. I really like what he has done, especially on the offensive side for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And he was certainly not the only rookie to take the ice for the Bolts this season. Connor Geekie made some waves after coming over from the Utah Hockey Club in the Mikhail Sergachev trade, and he had an okay playoffs. Geekie was certainly limited by his minutes, and unlike Gage Gonzalez, who just really earned more and more minutes over the course of the season, not that Geekie didn't, he certainly earned the right to be a top 6, top 9 guy for the Tampa Bay Lightning. But the Lightning were cautious with him. Geekie is maybe their most highly touted prospect, aside from Isaac Howard, in a very long time. And he was, the big centerpiece of that Mikhail Sergachev trade. JJ Moser is the easy answer to that question, it seems, just because of the defensive swap. But Connor Geekie, a 20-year-old former first-round pick, the Lightning liked what they saw in terms of his potential. And especially in game number 5, Geekie really flashed that potential as a two-way forward. I think he can certainly be a successful power forward as he advances in his NHL career. He's already played for Team Canada in the IHF or double IHF juniors, a prestigious tournament for some youth players. And, he's played at big stages, and he certainly got that. And his assist to Nick Paul that tied the game for Tampa back in that first period was just a flash of, I think, his brilliance. Great defensive play, poked the puck loose, quickly spun it around and found a wide open Nick Paul for the goal. Huge one to tie the game. Unfortunately, the Panthers outscored the Lightning 4-1 following that goal. But, the point is, the brilliance is there for Connor Geekie. You saw it with Gage Gonzalez, too. Both of those players down the stretch of the season, for Geekie in the last 2 games, really showed how much their development in the AHL had improved their play. And though I think Gonzalez's time in the AHL is likely done, we might see Geekie still go down there. It was definitely the plan for him to play some AHL time, and it took the Lightning about 50 games to get him down there, as Geekie earned a spot with the Lightning out of training camp. He played under 15 minutes on average over the course of the season, and I think he's a kind of guy who's going to improve because, the more minutes he plays, because a lot of the things he does, especially as compared to Gage Gonzalez, where you saw the more obvious numbers on the stat sheet show how well he did in his first full NHL season. A lot of the things that Connor Geekie does are just little things that don't really show up on the stat sheet. It's the hard hits, the big checks, the stick checks, and the quick turnarounds, shoveling the puck towards open ice, towards a player going for the goal, coming off of a defensive play or a big hit. Those are the things that Connor Geekie provides. He can really add that extra element of physicality that it was shown that the Lightning sorely needed. But it looks like they've got 2 talented forwards developing. Gonzalez might not be as physical of a player as Geekie is, who I can really see as a power forward and somewhat of an enforcer on the attacking side, with still the ability to make things happen offensively and get on the score sheet for Tampa. Gage Gonzalez has made some really nice shots. I mean, his wrist shot going to the roof is just excellent, and it got some big goals for the Tampa Bay Lightning all season long. And those are 2 players that I already expect to have a breakout season in 2025-26. Gage Gonzalez and Connor Geekie, 2 names to watch going forward, both in their 20s, and both expected to produce for the Tampa Bay Lightning for years to come. And speaking of years to come for Tampa Bay, the offseason is upon us. Free agency, all that isn't open just yet, but the Lightning do have some moves that might need to be made. We'll take a look at what the Lightning can and should do in terms of their cap space and team needs over the course of this offseason. Did you know that your Fire TV is also an Xbox? You can turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe or sign in to Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to go. Dive into hundreds of premium titles, including EA Sports, College Football 25 to Call of Duty, as easily as you stream your favorite shows. What if you could jump into your favorite Xbox titles without needing your console in your room? How do you game when you're not in front of your main setup, hotel stays, family visits, or even in the bedroom? Fire TV Stick 4K makes it possible to keep playing from almost anywhere. And if you already have a console, a Fire TV Stick 4K device is more affordable and easier to travel with, allowing you to take you or your kids' games wherever you plug in. Ever wanted to try out Xbox games without the big upfront investment in a console? Fire TV Stick can be a low-pressure way to start exploring. And if you ever find yourself flipping between apps to find one place that just works, with Fire TV Stick 4K, everything is in one convenient place, from Netflix to YouTube and beyond. And how do you currently stream content? And how much smoother could it be with a faster 4K-ready streaming stick? Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pack Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. The offseason is upon us, unfortunately, sooner than many of us hoped. I certainly did not expect this, but the Tampa Bay Lightning, I think, will have some moves to make when it comes to the offseason. I think, for me, priority number one for the Tampa Bay Lightning has to be defense. Just improving the Lightning's defense, because with prospects, with the guys on the roster already, the Lightning are pretty set when it comes to the offensive side of things. They finished the regular season as one of the top two teams in goal scoring. Their defense was still top 10 in most categories, but the offense was certainly the big strength for this Tampa Bay Lightning team. And they have their goalie, Andrei Vasilevsky, locked up through 2028. That is certainly good, although Jonas Johansson is a free agent now as his contract expired at the end of the season. Same is the case for Nick Perbix, as well as Yanni Gourde, Cam Atkinson, and Luke Glendening. With those contracts, including Johansson, totaling up to almost $5 million. So losing those players, making the room for, one big name, I think, on defense potentially to add. And you look at those guys, Cam Atkinson might retire. Same goes with Luke Glendening. Both of those guys are in their late 30s. And neither of them are $1 million cap hit. That is the case, though, for Yanni Gourde, who Julian Breesbro already made it clear that he was intent on signing him to a long-term extension after this season. Same goes with Ollie Bjorkstrand, who was a big loss in the postseason, I think, for Tampa Bay, though he is still locked up through 2026 for the Bolts. That, though, could be a contract that he restructures to try and help the Lightning add some more key players, because as smart as locking up the Lightning core has been, signing Kucherov through 27, Point through 2030, Gensel through 2031, Hagel through 2032, Cirelli through 2031, Nick Paul through 2029, the captain Victor Hedman through 2028, and Eric Chernak through 2020 or 2031. The Lightning did a really good job of locking up key players and guys who play major roles on the Tampa Bay Lightning team. But they are right at the edge of the cap. couple thousand in cap space maybe for Tampa Bay, and it was one of the reasons that Isaac Howard was unable to join the Lightning right now. And I think that you know, there still are some moves that could be made, but when you're looking at some of the defenders that I think could help Tampa Bay, a lot of the ones that I think could make an impact are pretty expensive. For me, a guy that I'm looking at that I think could be an instant help for Tampa Bay is Henri Jokiharju, the Finnish defenseman for the Boston Bruins, who was a $3 million cap hit for Boston that is now an expiring contract. And he might be kind of a discount option in the offseason for the Tampa Bay Lightning looking to improve their defense. And not only, I think, will Jokiharju be an improvement over maybe a Nick Perbix, but I think, he's 25 years old. So it's someone that could could be some long-term help for the Tampa Bay Lightning. So I think he might be a good option. Calvin DeHaan is someone who was not a big cap hit, traded from the Avalanche to the New York Rangers, 33 years old. Might be an option. Ivan Provorov, I think, is going to be the big free agent get. Ryan Lindgren might be up there as well, but both of those guys might be a bit too expensive for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Vladislav Gavrikov, another guy who is going to be a hot commodity in the offseason. That could be a potential option for the Lightning. But I think when you look at some of the big name defensemen, that just might be too expensive for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And frankly, even a guy like Jokiharju might be lured away by a bigger contract elsewhere, or even with the Boston Bruins after a really solid Four Nations face-off for Boston. He could end up, pumping up his price a little bit. But definitely some names for the Lightning to look at in terms of free agency. However, the answer could very well be in-house for Tampa Bay. I think Max Crozier, Declan Carlisle were two, younger guys, 25 and 24, who showed that they could already compete in the NHL. Crozier was called up for the last playoff game, didn't get to play, but he got some playoff experience last season against the Panthers as well. And he's someone that I think is certainly going to be in line to start the season with Tampa Bay. He has an under $900,000 cap hit on a two-way deal right now in the non-roster defense section. But he's someone that I think could be called up and frankly is already an early expectation to end up on the opening day roster to start the season for the Tampa Bay Lightning next year. So I think some of their defensive answers could be in-house, but there are definitely some high-level defensemen on the open market that the Lightning could test once it gets to that point in free agency. Jokiharju is certainly a name that I'm going to be monitoring. That'd be a huge get, taking him from the Boston Bruins within the Atlantic Division. But in some cases, I think the answer to the Lightning's defensive woes could be in-house. Just, I don't know if Crozier is going to make the same instant impact that a guy like Jokiharju or Provorov or Gavrikov would if the Lightning look to free agency to try and bolster their defense. But the one thing that's clear is that the Lightning, I think, need to add some defensemen and improve that part of their game in the offseason in 2025. And that is it for today's show. We'll have more offseason musings and ramblings and things like that starting on tomorrow's show. But thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Locked On Lightning and making Locked On Lightning your first listen today. Now for your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale and find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And wherever you listen to this podcast, thank you. Please give us a like, a follow, a subscribe. We appreciate the support as we do this show for you, the fans. So, fans, thank you again for tuning in. Thank you for listening to me throughout this entire NHL season and playoffs. Certainly not the way that we all wanted it to end for the Tampa Bay Lightning, but hopefully there will be better things to come in the off season, and hopefully you'll tune in as the NHL season is now over for the Tampa Bay Lightning. So thanks again for watching, for listening all season long, and I'll talk to you in the off season, Bolts fans.